I want to address the issue that is before us on the floor relating to the Congressional Review Act resolution that we will vote on shortly. And in my view, that will undermine existing law if it is passed. Too many times in recent years, we've had the terrible responsibility of bearing witness to the trauma and grief that follows gun violence. We see it in our streets every day, not just in Sandy Hook, that every day weighs on our minds and thoughts and hearts in Connecticut, but the more than 30,000 deaths every year and countless injuries all across the country in big and small town streets of Hartford, as well as rural and suburban communities. I am far from the only one in this chamber who has borne witness to that trauma and grief. Gun violence has claimed too many lives in too many places through mass shootings and in movie theaters, as well as the constant drumbeat of shootings that never make the headlines. Our constituents count on us to make them safe. That's one of the fundamental responsibilities of our government. And by overwhelming majorities, including majorities of Republicans and of gun owners, they support common sense steps to keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. In failing to move forward with legislation that would advance those goals, Congress has been complicit in this ongoing epidemic. It is truly a public health crisis. If more than 30,000 people died every year from a disease or other kind of communicable illness, there would be a call for drastic action. This kind of public health crisis must be met with strong steps. When many of us in this body who believe that Congress must now take action to stem the scourge of gun violence hear one refrain from our colleagues: enforce the law that already exists, we must meet that call. Enforcing the law that already exists is exactly what the regulation entails. And so we must be ready to move forward. And yet, as my friend and colleague, Senator Murphy, noted earlier, the Congressional Review Act resolution that we are about to vote on will not only fail to enforce existing law, it will undermine existing law. Federal law prohibits those who have severe mental health issues, that is to say, issues that would prevent them from safely handling a gun, from possessing a gun. Federal law also requires agencies who have information indicating that people are disqualified from gun possession to share that information with the NICS background check system. And under this regulation, the Social Security Administration has proposed to do exactly that. Pursuant to the 2007 NICS Improvement Amendments Act, a law passed in the wake of the horrific Virginia Tech shooting to address significant loopholes in the background check system, the Social Security Administration will submit records to NICS for Social Security recipients who meet a specific set of carefully defined criteria. The regulation will apply only to a subset of Social Security disability recipients. It does not apply to those who are receiving Social Security retirement benefits. It applies only to those disability recipients who have been found, based on the Social Security Administration's established criteria, to be severely impaired due to a mental disability, and who are therefore unable to perform substantial work or manage their own disability benefits. That is almost an exact quote. Repealing this regulation could lead to great harm exacerbating the loopholes and failings in the background check system that erode public safety. I have a letter from the United States Conference of Mayors, which represents city leaders from across the country. I ask that it be made part of a record, Mr. Chairman, if there's no objection.
Without objection.
It says, quote, "We all know that it is due to loopholes in current law that too many mass murderers are still able to too easily obtain guns. This includes the individual responsible for killing 32 people and injuring 17 others at Virginia Tech in 2007 that led to enactment of the NICS Improvement Amendments Act. These killings must stop, and this rule, as implemented last year, will help to do that. I ask unanimous consent also that a letter from the National League of Cities, which makes the same point, be included in the record."
Without objection.
We must note, it is critical to note, in fact, that neither I nor any of the proponents of the Social Security Administration's rule believes that all or most or even a significant percentage of those who are suffering from mental health issues are dangerous. Far from it. The overwhelming majority of people who confront mental health issues are peaceful and law-abiding citizens who seek only the treatment that should be everybody's right. In fact, I've been a strong advocate over many years of mental health parity, beginning when I was Attorney General in the state of Connecticut, and the very first federal law on this issue was passed, modeled in many ways after the state law that I championed. And I was proud to support the passage of a bill last year to provide more resources to those seeking treatment. And I hope that it moves this country toward providing everyone with the care that they need. Mental health issues should be no cause for fear, no reason for stigma, no excuse for shame. Those who have come forward and been open about the treatment they have sought, in fact, have done themselves and their communities and country a great service. If I thought SSA's regulation unfairly targeted people with mental illness, or that it advanced the perception that they are inherently dangerous, I would oppose it with every fiber of my being. But that is not the regulation that we have here. As Senator Durbin said this morning, and my colleague Senator Murphy reiterated, this rule is not one loosely applied to anyone who has some trouble balancing a checkbook. It applies only to those disability recipients with a serious and debilitating mental health issue. And that is estimated to about 75,000 people nationwide out of approximately 10 million Americans who suffer from a serious mental illness. Everyone who suffers from mental illness should have a right to treatment, but not all should have a gun. It is very unlikely that people who meet these criteria will be able to safely handle a gun or to safely store it in their home and prevent its misuse by themselves or by others. But it's possible that SA's initial determination will be wrong. And that's why, crucially, please understand, crucially, the regulation also provides due process. In fact, these due process protections are necessary when a constitutional right is at stake. And this right, Second Amendment right, must be respected as the law of the land. The regulation entitles those who are affected by it to advance notice. They are told when going through the process to appoint someone else to handle their benefits, that they will forfeit their firearms rights. They are given that notice, and they are given due process. If they believe this is inappropriate or unnecessary, the regulation gives them that process to appeal, and it's one that allows SSA to grant relief upon a determination that the beneficiary will not be, quote, dangerous to public safety, end quote, a term that has meaning. SSA is also required to notify the NICS background check system if the beneficiary's name should be removed, whether because it was submitted in error or because the beneficiary has recovered from the condition or because they were granted relief through the appeals process. Those are rights with real remedies, with due process, with fairness. If I thought this regulation failed to provide adequate process that every individual is due, regardless of how much I support its goal, I would oppose it with, again, every fiber of my being, because it should be, and it is, the law of the land. Of course, there may be ways that this regulation, like any regulation, could be improved if the criteria could be better targeted, or if the due process protections could be made stronger, or if the administration could be made more efficient. We should not hesitate to make those improvements. I would welcome suggestions for enhancements. But the methods chosen by my colleagues to attack this regulation, the Congressional Review Act, prevents all of those improvements, any at all. In severely limiting the time for debate, it denies us adequate consideration. And much worse, it is a blunt force instrument that will prevent the Social Security Administration from issuing any, quote, substantially similar, end quote, regulation in the future. So the passage of this resolution will prevent the Social Security Administration from complying with the legal requirement to submit records to the background check system in the future. It will hamstring this agency and prevent it from fulfilling its obligation to public safety. And that's regardless of whether new information comes to light or whether it would be possible to devise a better method of submitting these records. In the words of the well-known and respected group Americans for Responsible Solutions, using the CRA to undo this rule would, quote, not only allow guns to be placed into the hands of individuals determined legally incapable of using them safely, but it also creates an irresponsible, irreversible precedent. As I have always said, I will work with any of my colleagues on good faith steps to stem the tide of gun violence in this country, and I would be more than happy, in fact, I'm eager, to work with them to fix flaws that they see in this regulation. We need to come together to improve the integrity and efficiency of the national background check system and keep guns out of the hands of people who cannot safely handle them. People who are dangerous to themselves or others. It may be a very small number, but they can do great, tragic damage. The resolution we will vote on shortly accomplishes neither of these goals. It does nothing to answer my constituents who ask me time and time again why Congress does nothing to confront the epidemic of gun violence in this country. It would create an irresponsible, irreversible precedent. But more important than the precedent is the consequence in real lives of the death and injury that could result. Those deaths and injuries are truly irreversible and irresponsible, and we can help to stop them by taking the right stand on this resolution. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.